You picking me up, all right? Okay. All right. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm just going to briefly go through a summary of the fiscal year 2015 town manager recommended budget. This information was previously presented to the select board last week. Before I begin, I just want to go over what this year's budget directive was to frame the context of the information I'm about to present. The budget directive for fiscal year 2015 states that departments are asked to fund their current level of full-time equivalents utilizing the current ratified collective bargaining agreements. Departments are asked to prepare a base level line item budget to fund all recurring operational expenditures to maintain the current level of services. Increases in either personnel or expense lines should be requested in an itemized supplemental budget request. And the department heads did not only comply with that directive by and large, we also, as you notice, the budget is more than 10 times the size of the budget that we distributed last year, and that is entirely because of the select board's adoption of the Government Finance Officers Association, or GFOA, budget best practices, which the intent of which is to make the budgeting process more intuitive for people who are not familiar with the intricacies of municipal finance. I think. So even though it's a substantially larger document, you can read it cover to cover as if it were a book or a magazine. And so I think it really puts a narrative behind the numbers for, like I said, people at home who don't spend their year thinking about the town budget. So I want to commend the department heads for their work. It was a tremendous amount of effort putting this together. In future years, there won't be as much because, certain things like the organizational charts and the goals and the missions will carry over. But putting that all together this year was really, a huge amount of work for the town side department heads as well as the school side. The school they were on a faster timeline, and the budget best practices were new for the schools as well, and the acronym is ASBO. I'm not even sure I understand what that stands for. Okay, so Association of Business School Officials, and the school's budget is equally substantial and very well done. So I want to commend Assistant Superintendent Mazza and Superintendent Doyle and the school committee for their work.
Will copies of that complete budget be available to the public?
Yes.
Is there a cost of printing it and all that?
We haven't figured all that out, John.
No, I'm not trying to cost.
Yeah, and truthfully, it is a work in progress. There's a lot of edits that have to be made. Certainly, the numbers that are behind this have been available and have been reviewed. But when you take a bunch of divergent Word documents and smash them together, there's a lot of cleaning that needs to be done. So we're in the process of doing that, and we will try and find out ways to distribute a summary to the residents as a part of the warrant. And then also have it widely available, have some print copies available in town, and then find different ways to distribute it to folks because it is going to be a large document. Printing it and mailing it to everybody would be, I think, prohibitively expensive. I'm sure you guys have gone through the same exercise. So you have just received a handout that is basically a summary of the sources and uses of the budget. Thank you. Key grip, Mark Gold, thank you. So the basic source, and obviously this is not a detailed line item, it just shows you the sources and uses for the budget, which includes the operating, the enterprise funds, So in addition to having a substantially larger budget document with an enormous amount of content that was generated new this year, I am also proud to present this budget balanced and I think accomplishing many of the goals that I've heard talked about over the past year on the select board side, and I know the schools have some goals they want to accomplish on their end, and they were able to do that within the budget that they had recommended to me. So I'm not going to, the school has already had their public hearing on their budget, so I'm not going to go through theirs other than just talk about some of the numbers. But I think it's the dialogue this year with the school department was helpful in making sure we were able to get to this point with a balanced budget, and again, creating some opportunities for everyone to get a little bit more of what we feel the town needs. So I'm just going to go through these slides very quickly. I apologize if the pie charts are hard to follow. This is basically a summary of the general fund budget, and of course the general fund excludes enterprise funds and some other revenue sources. But this is essentially, by and large, your property taxes and local receipts, as well as state aid to local communities. The total general fund is just shy of $54 million. You can see how the pie is intended to show you the sum of the 54 million and how much of that pie is taken up by different functions. You can see the public schools represent about 58%. The next largest share is employee benefits, and then public safety, and then at 9%, and then debt service and public works are both at 7%. And then general government and community services are both 3%, and then you have that small amount for planning and community development. So this pie represents the overall town budget, which is $62.2 million. As you can see, we are in a people business. Our primary resource that we use to do what we do is human beings, and so not surprisingly, more than half of our budget is salaries. Another quarter of that is, another 8%, it's salary and benefits. Salaries, and then the benefits of the 12% in the brown slice. And then, so that represents the human side, the wages and benefits of the people who provide the services. And then you have debt service, which is about 8%. All told, that's nearly three quarters of the overall town budget, and those costs are largely fixed by either a contract, an employment agreement, a job description. How much we pay people and the benefits we provide are set by, like I said, by some kind of contract or agreement. And then debt service is obviously money we owe bondholders. So this is what I would describe as the fixed amount of the budget. The number that I would describe as more flexible are the expenses, which are about $14.7 million. So for general government, which includes some of our basic functions, I'm recommending a budget of about $1.5 million. That's a pretty small increase, about $90,000 more than the previous year's budget. One of the big drivers of that is the clerks. The budget for the town clerk is larger. One of the reasons we didn't have as many elections last year. We have 2 more. Obviously, elections are a big cost driver for the clerk's office. The employees, some of the employees in general government are due to receive what are called step increases, which are raises that they get by virtue of a term of service, and then cost of living adjustments, as well as an appropriation to go back to bring the reserve fund back to $60,000 for the finance committee. The public safety portion, which is obviously police and fire, the police department has a budget of $2.6 million. That's a very small increase, only $30,000, and there are built-in contractual salary increases for the patrol officers. And in the middle of the fiscal year last year, in fiscal year 14, this fiscal year, a supervisor was added to the crossing guard program, and the crossing guards did receive a small cost of living increase, and so there's a small increase for that program. The fire department budget is about $2 million. Again, there are steps and COLAs that are due to the employees by contract. One of the things it's it's about $7,000 in funds, but it's a 23% increase, so it kind of sticks out if you're looking at the line item budget. Vehicle maintenance, as you may be aware, our fleet is aging. Our one of our two main engines, I think, are 23 and 25 years old, respectively, or in that they're getting kind of the end of their use life. And as vehicles age, obviously, they need to be fixed more frequently, and the stuff that breaks on them is more expensive. And we've also seen there's been an increase in what's called shop rates, the amount of money mechanics charge per hour, and for certain services. So some of that increase is offset by other reductions made throughout the budget, but both of these are base level budgets. So planning and community development, again, it's a relatively small budget, and it's a modest increase. And one of the things is we've built in, when we prepared the budget, we had a full-time employee who was going to be out for an extended illness. And we're hopeful that, and they are now back at work, and we're hopeful they'll stay that way, but we built in some funds to get temporary help in case they're not able to, they have to be absent again for an extended period of time. So for the schools, again, the multi-fund budget is about $34.5 million. The general fund budget is about 31.4. This number is lower than you would have seen in the superintendent's presentation. One of the reasons is we are recommending taking an appropriation of about $134,000 for electricity for the new high school out of the budget and waiting to see how the first year's performance on electricity is for the school, and then paying the bill later in the year with either an appropriation request at the special town meeting or some other possible transfer. The reason why we're doing that is, and this would be a one-time exercise, because this new school is a very different user of energy than the old high school, obviously, and we haven't established a track record of what those bills are going to be month to month because of because of the new equipment and the building coming online in phases. So after we have a whole year under our belt of history, we'll be able to say, here's what the real electricity budget for the high school should be, and be able to budget that as a part of the general fund budget going forward. The schools, as I've added, the schools are expanding some of their services. We've talked about the full-day kindergarten as well as some other special education services. In spite of not being within the letter of a base level service budget, a 2.3% increase on the general fund budget certainly is within the spirit of the budget directive. Certainly well within our ability to balance it. And I should add, one of the reasons why the schools were able to do that is because they also made some choices to cut and create offsets to offset the new spending. So for the Department of Public Works, it's about a $3.5 million budget. That's a 6% increase, which is beyond base level. One of the primary things is DPW employees, some work for the enterprise funds, meaning the water and sewer utilities, and if they do a job, say repairing a water main, the time spent on that job gets billed to the enterprise fund. And so in past years, that allocation of time has been a best guess based on experience. At the request, I think, of the audit committee, the department collected the data collected 1 year of data with more accurate, I shouldn't say the word accurate, but more detailed timekeeping. And so the time they spent on enterprise fund projects went down, which increases the level of funds from the general fund to pay the wages and benefits. And we're going to phase in this adjustment over 3 years, and we're going to continue to collect the data. And again, same thing, to make sure we have a really multi-year picture of what the time spent on enterprise fund projects versus general fund projects is. But this year, it obviously is an increase in the general fund. We are recommending adding a long-term seasonal employee for the grounds division. I mean, we've talked a lot about infrastructure and the condition of our physical environment. I look at the additional long-term seasonal employee as an investment in our infrastructure and in our town. It'll help us do a lot more work on our grounds division. And another final larger cost driver is an increase for the high school maintenance. There's a lot more landscaping that needs to be tended to, as well as a much more sophisticated HVAC system with filters that need to be changed very frequently. So that's one of the costs that increase. The buildings division is within the Department of Public Works, so that's a cost driver. Community services. This includes the library. This is $1.5 million, about almost a $30,000 increase. One of the large increases is to the veterans benefit line items, and that's really a credit to our veterans agent Anthony Lawrence, who has really expanded his caseload by going out and connecting with veterans or their widows and making sure that they're connected with the benefits that they've earned through their service. And so the positive thing is that these people are now getting benefits that they deserve. It is driving up the cost, but this is an expense we're happy to pay. We also are recommending expanding the hours for the Counseling and Aging Director, who is currently a 30-hour-a-week employee. We're recommending bringing her to 35 hours a week, which will allow us to keep the Council on Aging at the Senior Center, where we sit tonight. We'll keep that open 5 more hours so the seniors can enjoy more of the benefits of the facility as well as the programming. Parks and Rec's budget overall went down, largely as a result of some staff changes due to declining daycare enrollment. So employee benefits and then liability and property insurance. Our budget, as I mentioned, it's a huge component of our budget, and it's about $7.2 million, and that's over $250,000 increase. On the positive side, our health insurance cooperative we belong to, Scantic Valley, is setting a 0% increase in our health insurance premiums because of high performance on their end. So that's great news for us. Another change Scantic Valley made is they went to a Medicare Part D egg whip program, which is essentially getting the funds up front for prescriptions instead of having to get reimbursed for them. So that saves us $120,000 a year. On the negative side, our assessment to the Hampden County Retirement Board is up almost $360,000, and that's due to some clerical corrections on what our overall payroll is, as well as I think that they are allowed to increase their assessment up to 8%, and they are choosing to do that this year. We have also increased our OPEB funding modestly, and we do have a cost increase on our liability insurance. Again, the new high school is obviously a bigger, newer, more expensive building, and therefore our insurance costs go up to keep it insured. So our debt service component of our budget is about 7%. That's about almost $3.8 million. That's actually a decrease in the excluded debt service, or debt service that was subject to an override. The debt service that is contained within our levy limit is going up. It's about $61,000. So the overall is a net decrease of about $165,000. So capital expenditures, the select board is currently deliberating the capital plan. They've received the recommendations from the town manager, the capital planning committee, as well as the Community Preservation Act committee. And the recommended projects are total about $3.3 million, and that includes the purchase of a Quint fire truck. We've laid out some sources here. The select, and I want to clarify that the select board has a policy that 2% of general fund revenue should be spent on capital every year. The town regularly spends greater than 2% of its overall budget because of the funds that come from enterprise funds, Community Preservation Act funds, But this is just, the 2% is specifically related to general fund revenues. That amounts to about $1.1 million. Through our budget process, we've been able to identify about $153,000 in levy capacity that can be applied to capital. And some other sources, we are going to, per the select board directive, we are going to talk to some of our tax exempt entities in the community about contributions for the Quint, which would offset that $720,000. There's a possibility that we will have free cash certified later this year that can be applied to capital. We have a truck fund that we do contribute to every year for replacement of fire engines, because they're, again, more than $500,000 every time you do it. And we're going to have another truck replacement coming up in the next couple of years. And then if revenues, especially local receipts or state aid, come back higher than we are projecting in this budget, that could also be applied to the infrastructure deficit that we have. Bottom line is, we believe that some of these parts are still moving and need to be nailed down before we can commit. But the bottom line is, it is our belief that the capital plan that we've laid out is achievable for fiscal year 15. I know that was fast, but now I can certainly open up to questions or comments. I'll shut this off so you guys don't open your eyes.
You move quicker than I do.
Is there a light over there?
Thank you, Stephen. That was very thorough, and I love the pie charts. Any questions or comments on the town manager's recommended budget? Thank you, and please state your name and where you are from.
Yeah, Jim Moran, 48 Avondale Road. I have a couple questions, and I looked at the 215-page budget report on the town website, but these are pretty good numbers in terms of looking at how it all goes. A couple of questions. One, the capital budget of $3.3 million, and I know you explained how that was going to happen. The 2% is normally about $1 million or $1 million plus. So there's some additional monies that are going to come, and they're going to come from all those other sources that you were talking about, including taking full advantage of the levy limit that we haven't gotten to the levy limit. We've held back in previous years. You're going to go all the way to the levy limit in terms of taxation. Is that part of the strategy? I mean, you talked about excess levy limit.
Our recommended budget assumes a taxing to the Proposition 2.5 levy limit.
That was $153,000 I think you had on your chart there. That's
correct.
That's over and above the 2.5% normal, right?
Well, it's within our budget. That's with our overall budget is within up against our Prop 2.5 cap, and that capacity is in there.
But it's unused capacity from previous years, or is it?
No. It's
No?
just this year. It's FY2015 capacity.
Okay. It just seems to me that $2+ million that we're going to come from other sources, we must be using a lot of our free cash and other things to be able to.
I neglected to mention Community Preservation Act funds.
Also, the $3.3 million includes capital that's being spent in community preservation. Okay, so that explains some of that. Now, one thing I'm looking at, if you look at the school department increase in general fund and the town side increase in general fund, we're talking about $1.4 million or something, some kind of total like that. I think it was $697 on the schools and $727 on the town, so about $1.4 million.
Could be.
Okay, and then the question I have is that's basically spending more money this year than we can tax in terms of an increase. I mean, 2.5% on a $50 million, 2.5% on a $50 million budget is $1.2 million or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Is there a question?
Yeah, I'm just asking, are we spending more money than we are able to raise it through property taxes?
No.
And
State revenue.
What's it?
State revenue's going up.
Yeah. State.
so there's other income coming in that's going to supplement our property taxes. That's kind of the message.
Correct. I mean, I think.
Local receipts and stuff.
Yeah, local receipts are going, local receipts are being increased about 6%. I mean, like I said, we are not spending more than we can levy or that we expect to generate through additional revenue sources.
No, we've done that in the past by just using free cash and other monies that we have in our pocket.
We don't have any free cash to
We have
balance
no,
the budget.
we have no free cash this year.
There's no free cash used to balance this
Okay,
budget.
good.
The 1.4, Jim, if you look, it is itemized in here. You know, $1,087,000 is coming from the property tax levy, 87 is coming from the state aid amount, and 253 in local receipts. That you look, if you look in the difference column, you'll
Okay.
see those itemized.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear what you're saying, Jim, I'm
I was
sorry.
trying to follow the numbers, trying to remember, all the charts you went
Yeah.
through and trying to
Yeah.
put it all together, so,
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim.
Any other questions or comments? I
Alright.
guess that ends, or unless there's any comments from the select board, no? That ends our public forum for this evening. Thank you very much, and thank you, Stephen and Paul, for working very hard and bringing in this budget within the levy limit and expanding on the capital. And we will end the meeting for this evening. Thank you.